All right, today we're gonna look at more records. I put a bunch of work into this, but let's speed through it. So most wins to start a career. Obviously, if you win your first tournament, you're gonna run off more points here. But all of Aurora, Bloody Abyss, Karmazin, Sevenute, and Spike Spiegel won their first four tournament games. Some of those were in the very first few tournaments. Some of those came a little later, but really impressive runs by all of them. Winning their first five tournament games, we have Broccoli, Nimloth, Sephiroth, Slawio, Soap, Spitfire, Tezuka, Ulti, and XCV. Winning his first seven, we have Kaus Debonair, and with a slight lead over the field in his opening to his career and his entire career, and setting what we will see in a moment is also the all time record. We have Doc Evil at 18 consecutive wins. Absolutely insane. Thought we should start there so we could all hail Doc Evil. Next, we have most consecutive wins. On 7, we have Aesla, Karmazin, Kaus, Slash, and Virgil. On 8, we have Cookie, Great Sephiroth, MC, Nightwish, Raceland, Majir, Sujiro, Turds. On 10, we have Deli, Reye, and Scythe. I think Deli's hit 10 a couple times, or 9 or 10 a couple times. Maybe like 3, actually. On 11, we have Kamikaze Was Up and Yojimbo. This is not the first time you will see myself and Yojimbo next to each other. On 13, we have Seto, the longest streak not held by Doc Evil, whose 18 is still not remotely close to touched in the history of Triple Triad. Unbelievable. All right. Most consecutive round twos. Now, in the past, I've noted Delhi has like 20 plus in a row of these, but that's 20 plus if I exclude the slightly less mainstream tournaments like Rhinoa's. If we include every tournament, which I did for most of the stuff we'll be looking at today, that streak drops to 10. But I should note there is a version of this where Delhi has a streak of like 24 consecutive round twos. As is, Great Sephiroth leads the list, and given that he only played like 22 tournaments or 23 total, this is an absurd achievement. Really cool result for Chickeny to come second. We see some names, Dream Virus, and Dream Virus did this early on. Gambit X is also a fun early inclusion. We see Grat here, Mafi Josie, Sir Smokes we haven't seen yet, Meta, MC. Me and Yojimbo are basically next to each other again. Cookie Fisto, that's another name. Dwarf Kazik, Omega Weapon. Impressive early results. I wonder if anyone knows a little more about Omega Weapon. Obviously not one of the all-time superstars of the game, but clearly one of the good early players. Ore, also known as Mu, and Tezuka. Most consecutive round threes. Now here I did the cutoff at 4. You can see players like C17, who didn't play very long, but you can see getting 4 consecutive round threes is actually a very rare historic achievement. Something I'm counting quickly. Only 22 players have ever done, and C17 played like 5, 6 tournaments or something and got 4 consecutive round threes. That's pretty nuts. That's really cool. Shout out to C17. We see Gafgarian got 5 consecutive round threes. Gafgarian made a finals and maybe TTAC 4, I think. I think losing to Cookie. Could have been TTAC 3. It wasn't 5. I think it was 4. But actually had a really nice run of results around it. Probably a player remembered by other Polish players, but not mentioned so much. And I think clearly worthy of mention here. Bren's run when he got his title, really, really impressive. This is not one I'm next to Yojimbo. He significantly ahead here, but Deli and Seto are next to each other, which is always fun. A lot of great players here. Tezuka had a recent icon streak, but you often get icons nowadays going like 1 and 1. But notably, Tezuka got it all going at least 2 and 1, and it is clearly just very hard to go at least 2 and 1 in every tournament you play. Also nice to see Grat here. Grat had a really strong peak around 07. Most consecutive round fours. Here I included anyone who got at least 2, which gives us some more names. We see Shadwell, Sphere, Vialva, Jaws, FF Player 7, Scythe with a C, Bryce, Aurora, um, Dream Virus with 3 in a row. I mean, yeah, really sick. Scythe with an S, Ulti. Ulti played 3 tournaments and made round 4 in all 3 of them, which you might think, okay, it's just a sample of 3, but look in history. How many people have had 3 consecutive round 4s in a row? It's counting quickly. Looks like it's 18. Just nuts. Yeah. I'm next to Yojimbo again, which is fun. Really, really fantastic run by Kana, one of the all-time great runs, and very impressive by Chickeny, Nightwish, and Seto as well. Okay, uh, you might think, why is Dully not higher? Dully tends to follow up all his wins with a relatively early dropout in the next tournament. And then he might win the next one after that, but he tends to have one or like one not deep result in between each of his top results. So he doesn't get quite as many sequences like this because he has funny sequencing of his results. Most consecutive round fives. I lead here, but notably, Doc Evil played 3 tournaments and is only one of 3 players to ever make 3 consecutive round fives. How insane is that? You'll also see Ulti appearing again here. We see Piggy Man. Um, we see Aurora and Bryce, who didn't play a lot but really dominated what they did. Nice appearance for Homer. Very impressive at his absolute best around, I think that's early 2008. Smokes, Vid, some of the usual names. All right, most consecutive round sixes. Now, Doc Evil is tied for this despite only playing 3 tournaments. That's nuts. But this goes to show how difficult it is to have 2 deep runs in a row. I did for the purposes of this, and you should remove, if you disagree with me doing this, you should remove myself and Yojimbo from the list. If someone won a 5 round tournament, going 5-0, I counted that as making it to round 6 because if it had been a 6 round tournament, they do make it to round 6. Um, so it is possible to achieve this in the era when it drops to 5 rounds if you are winning those 5 round tournaments. I thought that seemed fair, but again, your mileage may vary. If so, feel free to cut those too. Also, Ulti, what a great early player she was. Okay, most icons in a row. Now you'll notice in a lot of the winning 3 in a row, some of the unexpected names were early names, or winning like most tournaments, winning, making it to round 3 in a row. Early tournaments were longer and I think more diluted, more weaker players. So it was a little easier to get runs to go 3 deep in every tournament, make it to round 3. So someone like Tezuka or Kana doing so often is really impressive because they did so later with more difficult fields. On the other hand, in the recent era, it's a little easier to get icons in every tournament. Often, winning a single round gets you an icon, or an activity win, or some buy gets you into the icon rounds. So I'm most impressed by Kana's streak of 6 of the streaks here. Like you can argue Akiyama, Deli, Turd, Seto, Tezuka, Vid, but I think all of those basically just happened in the past few years. Kana is the one that didn't, followed by MC and Nightwish. So while all those 6 are great, I think Kana, MC, and Nightwish are still the 3 most impressive here. And once again, I'm next to Yojimbo, which I always think is amusing. Nice run by Dream Virus. That's really cool in an era where tournaments were all 7 rounds. Um, yeah, that's cool to see. Okay. Most icons in a single year. The all-time leader is still Kana. He is no longer the all-time icon leader, but he really is the king of getting icons. And just much respect for the runs he had. This is something that was probably easiest to do in the 2008-ish period. Um, but the number of tournaments each year varies a bit. But Kana gets his in 2008, and 2008 probably is the easiest, kind of 2008 to 11 is the easiest period to get this. So I've said most icons in a row is easier to do now. Most times getting to round 3 is easiest at the start of the site, but most icons in a single year is easiest in the middle of the site. So it's kind of curious, depending on what you look for, you can find different things that get easier or harder over time. Though despite Kana doing this when it was most possible to do, it's also insane that he actually did it. I mean, there were a lot of great players playing then, and he's the only one who did it. Mafi Josie is fun to see here. Piggy, Ray Eminator, I think this is the first time we've seen him. And a lot of the great names you'd expect. I talked about Kaus's run to 4 icons in a year being just pipped out by Kana for first to do it in the last video. Okay, most titles in a row. Only 3 players have ever done this, and one of them is Doc Evil. Also, I'm next to Yojimbo again. Most titles in a single year, once again. And here we also see Deli and Seto. Deli and Seto were really good at winning a title right before a year changed to a year they won two titles. So I think they both have achieved three titles within a 12-month span, but it has never landed in a specific year. And that's sort of a goofy thing about looking at specific years. It's going to be really arbitrary what lands within it. I think I write this out explicitly later, but if someone has a July to June run and someone has a January to December run, the January to December run all happens in the calendar years I look at. The July to June run looks like, oh, you had 6 months that were really good in each of 2 years, but it doesn't combine into one great year, even though it was one great year. So there's some arbitrariness to this, and if you divided things up differently, it would come out differently. But if you're gonna divide up into a year-long span, feels like the least arbitrary way to do that. I guess that's what I was thinking. All right. Then I did yearly performance ratings. So again, ELO is a rating system that basically adjusts win percentage for strength of opposition. But if you don't play that many games, your ELO takes a while to reach your strength. So if you're 2200 strength and you're rated 2000 and you perform at a 2200 level, it will slowly and asymptotically move to 2200. And you will see some players who achieve a 2250 rating but are clearly like 2100 strength, and it will slowly decline back to 2100. So what I did here was I just took yearly performance rating. I just took every game you played in the year. What is the performance of those games? Not like what rating would you reach from a certain starting rating, but just if I only knew these games and knew you could like replicate them forever, what rating would I assume you are? And here are the top performances from 2004 to 2008. The numbers here, the first number is the performance rating. The second thing is the name of the player. The third thing is the year they achieved this. And the fourth is the number of games they played that year. So I set a cutoff at 10. If I had set it at 9, Virgil's 2399 would have placed fifth. But I set it at 10. I did not want to be looking through records for people that played like 4 games and just happened to have a high performance. I don't believe in small samples. We're already dealing with quite small samples, so I really wanted to make sure it wasn't too small. But I did want to shout out Virgil because he had a really incredible 2006. That said, we have Doc Evil's insane performance in 2004. And then you see two different Seto performances, just a wonderful 2007-08 that looks clearly ahead of Dalial's 2007-08, but I would note they are both basically the 4 best years to this point, if you exclude Doc Evil and Karmazin basically going undefeated in playing 2 tournaments. Of anyone that played more than 2 tournaments, these are the 4 best years, and there's a pretty big margin. You'll notice there's a big drop off between 6th and 7th. And I would also note Deli played more games, so he did it over a bigger sample, and Deli won the head to head. So Seto's overall performance, given his opposition, I think is stronger, but there is still a case for Deli, which is more games, and he won the head to heads versus Seto. When they came up against each other, Deli won. But Seto's win rate against everyone else was higher. Overall, I think you give the nod to Seto for those years, but it's really, really close. And Seto's 2007-08 and Deli's 2007-08 are, I know Doc Evil's top of the list, but to me, the most impressive things here by a substantial margin. Fantastic run by Meta in 2006. As I said earlier, if Meta didn't keep losing to Deli, he would really look historically important. Beast Day's 2004 run, the one player to ever beat Doc Evil. Kamikaze's 2004 run, you'll notice, is over 21 games. So I would actually put Kamikaze's 2004 ahead of everything basically but Seto and Deli and maybe Doc and Karmazin. I think that's really impressive. Kana's 2008 over 28 games is even better than Kamikaze's 2004. Slightly lower rating, but over 7 more games, I'll take it. On the other hand, there's clearly rating inflation over time. So I think Kamikaze's 2004 probably is a touch better. It's a little easier to be higher rated because ratings do go up over time, and that will become very clear as we see future charts. Because we will see people with lower win rates get higher performance ratings because just everyone's higher rated at that point at the top levels of tournaments. Bren's 2005, really fantastic run. We get the start of Great Sephiroth's amazing run, and note with 21 games played, that's pretty meaningful. Sujiro's dominant 2006. Seto's not winning anything, but really setting himself up at a level where he was very obviously ready to start winning everything. His 2006. You see Cookies 2004 and shortly after Cookies 2006, two really spectacular years. Coming out of 2006, if not for Doc Evil, um, Cookies probably the GOAT. I think his 2 years probably surpassed like Karmazin's one, and it would be maybe Kamikaze is ahead, but it's close. Cookie would have a case at GOAT if not for Doc Evil. We see fun players like Kazik and D. This is D's peak before he won a tournament when he made a bunch of deep runs in 2007. We see Turds as Vincent, 2008 win. We see more results from Kana. We see Yojimbo's first year on the site. He's already putting up one of the best performances put up. Kefka's 2005, especially given that ratings were a little lower then, is super impressive. Kamikaze again. Jadat's 2006. Jadat's peak happens to not align well with years, so he'd place a little. He's one of the players most screwed by the yearly cutoff here. If it was like midway through 2005 to midway through 2006, he'd jump, 30, 40 points, but still very good. Mafi Josie getting that score in 2004. Yevon, Kaus twice having crazy runs and notice over a decent number of games. And I was setting the cutoff at 2200, but Grat was the highest scorer that didn't make 2200, and I wanted to include him because Grat's awesome. Okay, we move on to 2009-13. Expect to start seeing generally higher ratings. So if you look at 16th right now, it's 2298. We pop ahead, it's 2310. Okay, that's not that much higher, but it's a bit higher. We have 33 players with 2200 plus performances rather than 30 or 29. Okay, it's pretty close. It is pretty close. I think there is some jump at the end, which we'll get to because it's important to denigrate anything Yojimbo achieved. If not doing that, what's the point of my videos? On the other hand, look at Yojimbo's insane number. What a year. He goes 15-1 on that year, not quite Doc Evil's 18-1, but beating just much, much stronger opposition. You cannot look at the players he faced and the players Doc Evil faced and not tell me you think Yojimbo's run is not better. It's just very clearly better. Yeah, so insane run for Yojimbo. I have a really good run in 2009. That's the year I win 3 tournaments. Kamikaze's 2010, where he wins Squall, which might be the strongest tournament ever won. There's a case for Sujiro's Eris. There's a case for Kamikaze's Squall. There's a case for Seto's Triad Wars 8. And I think those are the main contenders. Delhi, kind of a couple of his tournaments, probably with Triad Wars 6, is probably his top, but that's like 4th or 5th on the list. He's a couple that will make the top 10, but I don't think any that are real contenders for first. I think it's those 3. I think those are the 3 contenders for best tournament ever won. Sujiro's a 7-rounder. The ratings look lower, but ratings were lower then. Faced a lot of the top people at the time. Seto's Triad Wars 8, he was facing all the best players of the time, and similar for Kamikaze's Squall in 2010. We get MC's insane 2010 run. We get Seto just being fantastic every year. Delhi drops off for some of these years. We'll see him sort of start to pop back up around 2013, though it was very good 2010. Just happened not to get the deep runs, but faced very difficult opposition. We see Vid's insane 2012. Now, I would argue 2012 is we start to get somewhat inflated ratings, and we'll see even more of that in 2014 onward. But yeah, fantastic by Vid. Similarly amazing by Smokes in 2013. Great Sephiroth has his just set of fantastic years. You may have noticed his 2008 was also incredible on the last list. Chickeny's 2012, Piggyman's 2011. I said in the last video I think Piggyman's the best player to never win. I think it's Chickeny. I forgot. But Piggyman's real close. You get Delhi, you get Nightwish, you get Slash. Slash can complain about this list. I should mention this list does not include Team Rhinoa or closed tournaments. Mostly closed tournaments have not started happening yet. I think they either start in 2013 or the next year. But Team Rhinoas are happening. And the 3 best players in Team Rhinoas are probably in this order: Slash, Nightwish, and Yojimbo, but you could argue it any order. Like, it's very close. Yojimbo tends to have the furthest runs with weaker teammates, but Nightwish and Slash end up having more overall achievement in the tournaments, but maybe Yojimbo is performing better. It's hard to say. They're all really close. So Nightwish, Slash, and Yojimbo's scores could be even better here. And Slash not showing up so high on these lists are in part because he was so dominant in a format that I don't have a good way to include here. Um, Note that 2012 that would not change Yojimbo's score, or it would lower it a little if those were included, but it would help him in the other surrounding years. So it would move down his top score, but it would help his lower scores. While Nightwish and Slash, it would pretty consistently raise. But Yojimbo's first place score is so insanely far ahead that almost nothing could raise it, and it would come down a bit. Um, okay, Metis we get in 2011. This is Metis's first peak. We get a few great years of Smokes. We get a really wonderful showing from Focus in 2010, who then drops off. Kana's great every year. D wins a tournament in 2011. Kana continues to be great every year. Yojimbo's really good every year. Piggy Man's really good every year at this point. Nice to see Ray Eminator. Again, really good player. Really started getting very good in 2011-12 before he dropped off. Now I give my caveats. I think we've already talked about most of them. But one thing is, because of the qualifier of games played, we didn't include Virgil. I didn't even check these other four players, but myself, Seto, Deli, and Slash all win tournaments in years we do not get 10 tournament games completed. And you might think that's a little weird because Deli tends to be active, but some years like 2014 and 15, you really had to play every tournament and have good runs in all of them just to have enough games played because there just weren't that many tournaments. And current years sometimes too, depending which tournaments count for lists like this. So it just became harder to qualify. Like I played one tournament in 2011, I happened to win it. That's not going to get me 10 games played. Seto has basically the same resume in 2011. He plays one tournament. He might play two tournaments, but he wins one of them and doesn't reach 10 games played. Deli, in fact, has 2 years where he wins a tournament, and I will not list him because he did not reach 10 tournament games played. Is this bias against Deli? Yes, it is. And Turds also has had a number of years that just missed the games requirement recently, where he was obviously playing at a really high level. Um, yeah, and Slash gets a win as well. So there's a bunch of runs that just aren't included here that are very impressive, and if we combined them with the years around them, they would improve the years around them and make those look even better. We also have the whole rising rating things happening. We're going to jump to the present now, or the last decade, and you'll notice the ratings are getting higher. They weren't as much higher as I sold you on in the last video, but I think looking at these, you will agree. Um, Thinking about the win rates of the players here, and just that some of the players with much higher scores have either not won tournaments or won far fewer tournaments than some of the runs we've talked about. It's probably not, these probably haven't been way better runs in the ways they might look like here. But you can adjust that for yourself, and if you just like the numbers, this will be what the numbers say. And then also the caveat about yearly cutoffs. Okay, let's get into the final decade. We have Akiyama's really incredible 2015. You can also see very good in 2014 and 2022, but 2015 is the year he wins his tournament, makes a finals, only plays those two tournaments, but a win in a finals, beating, for instance, Yojimbo, is worth a whole lot. We see more Yojimbo, of course. We see Tezuka's 2022. We see Piggy Man's 2022. And of the later years, Sir Smokes is a great 2013, but if we set the cutoff at 2014, before TTA is reborn, Yojimbo, Akiyama, and Chikane are pretty clearly the big three. In the rebirth, I would argue the big three, and you could argue for Seto here, who's basically won every game he's played, but probably overall, you'd go with Delial Turds and myself, with Seto and Akiyama really up there, and Tezuka up there. You'd list those six in some order. But because of the game's requirements, some of those just don't make the list, while Piggy Man's fantastic 2022 does. And I'm not saying Piggy Man's 2022 doesn't deserve to make the list. I'm saying you might have expected to see other names that you don't see here. And had they made the game's requirement, they would look really good here. They did not. Piggy Man did, and Piggy Man deserves to look really good here. Good riddance to Deli and Turds. Okay, enough of the caveats. I have the all-time list. Here's the top 10 yearly performance ratings. We've already sort of talked about everything, so, look and be impressed by, for instance, MC or Kamikaze doing that maybe 4 years after he was actually at his best, which was really impressive comeback. Then I set the game's requirement at 15 to reduce some of the shorter runs. And here's what the list looks like if you set the requirement at 15 games to qualify in a given year. As I said, I'm really high on Kamikaze's 2004 and Kana's 2008. Nice to see them appear. These are basically the names you'd expect in some order or other. I would note MC's 2010 peak is really, really good. And you might also do some yearly adjustments. You'll notice most of the list happens between 2008 and 2010. So Delhi getting here with a 2007 run, Kazi getting here with a 2004 run, you might give a significant extra credit to if you wanted to. And here's the 20 plus games list. Only 8 players qualified playing 20 plus games. Again, Kaus's 2008 is one of the great years. Cookie's 2004 now shows up, and Great Sephiroth's 2008. This is probably my favorite list because we have booted Yojimbo, and as I said, the whole point of these videos is to slander Yojimbo, which is really hard to do when he's putting up a goddamn 2601 in a given year. So, Yojimbo, pretty incredible, unbelievable peak. But here's the 8 that had at least 20 games played in the peak year. And then the last thing I did here was I took notable multi-year peaks. Cookie over a 3-year stretch. His 2005 was a down period, but over 45 games, he put up a 22-43 over a 3-year stretch, and there is nothing like that, quite like that in the early years. I probably, like, Kamikaze is probably close to that, but I think you have to give the nod for, like, a long period, for, like, more than, Doc Evil played. You have to give the nod to Cookie there, though I think Kamikaze is close, and I wish I'd included him. But I wasn't sure what counted as his peak, because his real best year is 2010, but his, like, general multi-year peak is 2004 to 6 or 7. So I wasn't quite sure what to do with him. But probably between Cookie and Kamikaze, with Sujiro likely in third for that period. Then we get into the Deli and Seto runs. Seto starts winning a little earlier, plays fewer games, but if you include 2006, you get him to slightly more games. And Seto and Deli really set the baseline for what's possible in just winning in Triple Triad. And then this bunch of new players, the Polish brothers, Great Sephiroth, Yojimbo, myself, Kana show up and start doing comparable things. Not necessarily like better or as good, but like comparable-ish things. But Cookie and Deli are Seto and Deli are just this huge jump, in my opinion, from Cookie and Kamikaze and Sujiro, who are truly tremendous all-time players, and that Seto and Deli kind of just lapped what they had done. And if you look at the last videos, you'll see like they were the first to win 3 tournaments, kind of thing. And then Kana's 2264 is a bit lower, but the thing was, Kana is very similarly good every year from 2006 to 11. I believe every year in that period made this list, and his 2012 was pretty decent too. He actually won a tournament that year, but his other results were poor, and it shows some drop off. But this is a 6-year span where every year he is one of, like, the 5 best players in the world, or the 6 best players in the, basically the 5 best players in the world. Sometimes a little better, sometimes maybe borderline top 5, but just every year doing that for this insanely long period. And if we took a shorter peak, he probably doesn't show up here, but it's just so impressive to me he did this over 85 games. Yeah, if you took Deli over 85 games, you'd have, or Seto over 85 games, you would have a higher peak than Kana's peak. But it wouldn't be so representative because their real peak is this 2006 to 8 period, and then they're weaker in this 2009-11 period. They're both still very good, but it would be taking this like transcendent dominance where there are 2 players just miles ahead of everyone and combining it with a time when they are 2 very, very good players, but not near as dominant. Kana's run is just great the whole way. And so it made sense to me to combine it, and I think it deserves its place on this list. Great Sephiroth is the, I think, first player after and starting during Seto and Deli's run to put up a run that is almost of their quality. It's not quite, and again, rating inflation means it's a little further away than it looks like. You may think more than that, but I think a little further away. But Great Sephiroth does something where I don't think ratings have inflated that much between this set of years. I think the real inflation comes a little later. And Great Sephiroth is the first player to come really close to what they're doing. And Nightwish, over fewer games, but keep in mind Nightwish did great in Rhinoas, and those aren't included. Nightwish arguably has an even better case for replicating the level of Deli and Seto. Again, not quite getting there, but coming close. Obviously, if you're comparing these players all time, Deli and Seto continue winning much longer and are both basically winning all their games nowadays. So, Deli's won what, three of the last five, six majors. Seto's won one of them, but he's only played a couple, and he like won one and left in the semifinals of another. But basically, he's not losing at all. Deli's winning every other tournament. They're still doing insane things. Obviously, they're ahead all time. But for real periods of time, Great Sephiroth and Nightwish came close. And then you have the peaks of myself and Yojimbo, with Yojimbo showing up a touch better here, the slightly fewer games, but the margins, 3 games, that's not much of a sample. On the other hand, 12 points is a pretty small margin as well. We're here to slander Yojimbo, so let's pretend his score isn't as incredible as it is. But two really nice peaks. I guess my excuse here is going to be rating inflation. Let's pretend that's why. But yeah, Yojimbo, phenomenal, unbelievable scores. Um, yeah, and I think these stand out as the best peaks. I probably should have included Kamikaze here, especially for their eras, right? If I was just looking at the best multi-year peaks and rating, like Cookies wouldn't show up, but it's just so clear that ratings weren't as high in 2004 to 6, and that he does show up for this period, despite a poor 2005, is insane. Yeah, I think these are the 8 best runs, with Kamikaze having the most claim that I'm rudely excluding him, and maybe Slash of Time, given the Rhinoas that aren't included. Those are the names coming to mind. Maybe Akiyama's recent run also has some case to be here. All right, I think that's all I got. Yeah, so it's fun putting this together, and I liked I spent a lot of time on the ratings, apologies, but just like these streaks I think are neat, and look through them, see some fun names. Hope this was